Dr. Jubb, thank you so much for being here. You're the best.
Yes, great to be with everybody today, mate. I really feel we're doing a lot of eye awareness as we put everything together. And so it's really great to be with everybody. We've really been talking a little bit about the value of uncut wood. And is it amazing that there's a value of something that is of itself and doesn't have to be improved? You know, but how can we improve upon this moment? It's not possible necessarily, but how can we improve upon the past? Certainly you can't. And how can you improve upon the future, which hasn't arrived? You can't. I mean, this is the value of a stone left unpolished, you know. But is there a general sort of a pattern we might ask ourselves, you know, through life's up and downs? And, you know, if eye awareness really is equal to not living for some future goal, I mean, eye awareness is not really not living for some future goal, certainly not. And this knowing is within us, and this is the voice within you, and this is the voice that comes from inside you, and this is not imparted to you, but that this is something that's coming from inside you, and this is versus sort of some gathered knowingness or something outside. But eye awareness really is equivalent to a science as a part that's equivalent to no wrong. That's not equivalent, certainly, to people pretending claims and things to the whole. But when somebody's really pretending claims to the whole, that's where things really go wrong, you know, because this is really not about perfection, but it really is more my beingness and yours and our listening right now in our totality and coming from our totality. But eye awareness really is equivalent to laws really being upheld, and if they're not, then they're not, you see. That's all. And this is applied as I is the way, really, and all the religions that are existing really become more the means for this, you know, to be achieved. Yes. But we really need to be living very deeply and tremendously, and that's what I care about in this programming, that you're having the ability to be equivalent, of course, to this, to be very far away and very deep inside as you are listening and into this living deeply, tremendously. But we definitely should be choosing what's new, mate, definitely, and we should not be accepting anything old anymore. That's not right. And you need to use your voice. But that doesn't require any degrees, as we've talked about. It doesn't really require any steps. This really is more your beingness within yourself, and this is the quantum leap within yourself into the unknown and opening up what you have within you that you're seeking, what is unknown. But all one really is equivalent to what's essential, and this is you and I, and this is not equivalent to being sort of lonely, even though, of course, someone could be lonely, just as someone could feel grief and loss, and they cannot maybe necessarily get to rah-rah because they do have something which where they're integrating some loss. But loneliness really is probably equivalent more to an accident more, and something being more uncaused is causing that. But an accident continued is the loneliness really, but emptiness is really equivalent to something which is not your thinking or human-made at all, but to become a means to some end, as we use a boy's life so quickly, for instance, and not to be concerned about the person who could have become a puppet or just a figure of an archetype of something to be put upon as a person, and we can be dissociate it and not consider that this is our baby and this is someone's son or this is someone's daughter. But people really are full into desire and all of that, and more is better, and burning more rubber on the road, as we've talked, and building bigger houses and things like that. It's really a metaphor for desire, which really is like a wind blowing over the rubbish that's not still at all. And it's really the riding of an appetite of the beast, but that's a behaviour which is not social, but we need to be able to recognise fully within ourselves and express what's more social. But certainly being relaxed and having more relaxation, in yourself, being equivalent to timelessness, and knowing what you can do and knowing what you can't, and really having a really good, deep courage and conviction to ever be aware of what's possible to be, and to keep hope and feel hope within yourself, and feel possibleness, and feel and look and keep an outcome that you have within yourself. And this is really just simply being empty and recognizing that our playfulness and our playful state of our being really is a person's true state of being. But that persons who are not so really playful within themselves at all, or maybe not expressing really whole brain functioning in their behaviour, that could be sort of problematic, yeah. How you doing, Lucy? Are you there, mate? Yeah. Nothing really is causing anything else, You really could say this, that all really is the essence of I being self-existent. And as I, aware, everything really is part of the whole, and no real individual separateness or part exists, you see. But you can really see a condition, perhaps, and we could see a condition, but that, for instance, you completely see, you complete something, for instance, before entertaining another project, so you really might start a lot of things. It's really what you're actually getting done that's really counts. But events really are not caused, yet really are necessary, and a certain condition is created. But a construct really only has heuristic sort of value, more by sort of something sort of being explained, But I really is more not a linear sort of a dynamic or a straight line at all, but very much more non-linear and not square or angular, but is as energy is around us, more circular and dynamic, where the sameness really is requiring some uniqueness, and this is creation, which is not at any standstill, because you've got degrees of something which is sameness, but there's a uniqueness within this. You and I really put out what summons back, and I is more sort of cyclotronic and circular in its dynamic, and then linear thinking and straight sort of thinking and things, and square angular sort of thinking, or narrowing down on something can be dismissing really everything, which is what the whole is of this great cosmic wheel of life. But unique linguistics and language really does reflect the origin of our culture and teachings, and certainly no uniqueness exists of this oneness of itself, you've got you've really got friendly fire, of course, as we talked about in our past program, of 400,000 United States boys that have been killed, and 80% of those boys that have been killed, which is 20%, really was from friendly fire. And what's going on there that soldiers really have a loss of love, but that they've been trained to be with something where what's above can even have been perhaps a loss of love, we really need to be very caring, very much about our armed forces and people and service people very, very much. And my father certainly didn't risk his life, saving American boys, which he did on the front lines as a medic, and not to live necessarily a good life himself afterward. But that he didn't do this necessarily, certainly see his grandchild, for instance, not have a father, which American, certainly the American system is a fatherless sort of a system, it's really not a closed box, certainly, and we've got to go beyond jet fuel, in the water, and how does it contaminate everything, and why should that be that way, But the frontal temporal lobe in dementia and things, and violence stimulate sort of conditions where there's a whole range of difficulty for people to initiate or to move, or to have moved more slowly, or to have involuntary sort of movements and things. And all the omega-6 fats and things that people are eating really isn't helping, and that causes ever more toxic beta-amyloid plaques and things, to form in the brain. But energy and motion of itself, just a person really centered around their integratedness in their pleasure and interest, and recognizing this as the major state to be, because no matter what is happening, it's possible for you to really remain in this very, very fine state. But otherwise, there could be a state otherwise. It sort of is more not the path of least resistance, but resistance, and that's difficulty to initiate and to move more slowly, and then that's all conditions that have gone on psychologically, and things that could have been other than allowing proper dopamine and serotonin to function within a person and a child, and the child grows up to be an adult. But that by itself, energy in motion and not being put correctly can have zombieized, you've really got a sort of the first trigger of unpleasantness, and if that was just a snake bite, I guess it's just simply a snake bite, isn't it? And that there's no interpretation of it, and we're not judging the body's reaction at all. And so bradykinin isn't released, and histamine isn't released, and inflammation and edema, and those things are controlled. And the mind is something which is controlled that just by having been empty of itself. But typically, whatever it was, which was the first trigger of that unpleasantness, what we could talk about, which is the value of uncut wood, is not adding to that, which is the added reaction, and that's the second trigger. And these are what we call where people are other than able to be remained with their energy and motion in their stability. And maturity really is the ability for one to be able to manage emotion and beingness in their life, and be responsible for everybody in beingness around. But typically done what is after there could have been an initial trigger of some unpleasantness experienced, was what a person's response was, which is a strategy. But how do you accept having achieved something? And some people have fear of success of itself, because then what happens after that? And then what happens if you other than get what it is that's necessary in the moment? How do you process things? This is strategy, and you have degrees of excellence. But typically done, could persons listening agree that when something was triggered for them, that they typically did that then, which was the second response, 10,000 times, over and over and over and over again, and perpetually throughout, and they can have not necessarily had the ability to have moments of their dreaming to let things go, that even their body could be healing up. But I'm really caring very much, as people are listening, that I really love you and I really care about you, and that this is a beautiful voice for you to hear inside, and that a note would really be missing if you were not here, and a colour would not be here if you were not here, and you really would be missed incredibly. And I really care very much for people out there to feel and hear this voice inside themselves, that you're really doing a good job. Thank you very much. And I really, really love you. The second trigger really being associated as this is being more either associated or dissociated, because you're associating towards something, aren't we? And you're dissociated away from other things. But in the process of you being associated toward your emptiness as I, there's not any second trigger needed of any associated or dissociated neural network. And then, but those second triggers and things that occur for people, as you can get a bit of a feeling of what we're talking about here, those second triggers sort of occur without a first trigger necessarily being present, even as imaginedness could have been even the first trigger, which a lot is actually an imaginedness, which is the first trigger. And these are things which we can really recognize and clear away. But otherwise, then other triggers after that, of course, which is really the third triggers, and then that can be many, which include sort of greed, because people want to avariceally own or hold or control, or and then hate and botheredness and anger and delusion can have tricked a person to be of putness personally. And then who's doing that actually, all of those other triggers? And then how many times can it have been done? Perhaps over 10,000 times. But the second reactions are for generally some positive adaptive reason, though secondary negative consequences often exist because our actions can be not really from an emptiness and really doing what we can to be supportive of the people that we're working with as we can. But sometimes you need to put your foot down, you know what I mean? But suffering really is felt by the body's central nervous system and hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And this really is via your endocrine glands. And your energy and motion and how relaxed you are and how cool you are in the moment really is a matter of your ability to be able to multiple process and get things done. But we could otherwise be in a dreamlike state, and instruments that we've put in front of us can have caused us to become zombie-eyed ourselves and held. We don't know how to get out of a pattern of surfing once somebody really has little dopamine or serotonin, or hasn't developed a pattern of being in the day that really allows them to feel satisfied in their beingness by just simply being empty. But we've had to have a lot of things done, which that's not correct. But the anterior frontal cingulate cortex harmonizes our activity. The septal region region of our brain needs to be firing, and as this is firing, interest and pleasure is existing, and that's causing our frontal cortex to become active, and information becomes logged in the frontal cortex. And as you have an interest and pleasure, and as you're with the strange and unusual, and you're lifting this veil of illusion, and this is exposing to you things of a forgotten dimension, really. Your frontal cortex and it has to be active in logging new information. And then as you're dreaming tonight, as you have your slow dream wave sleep pattern incurred, the information then becomes logged in the postmodal cortex area and then becomes more in long-term memory, having the ability to be able to access this for several weeks afterwards. If you entrain even water that is living to an entrained memory of a pattern, it can retain the memory of this for up to 6 weeks or more. But the interest and pleasure stimulate access to the frontal cortex, and the frontal cortex is much more connected to the back of the brain than the right hemisphere, and it has a lot more grey matter, and it's sort of on-off fast switch, and it's involved in planning and sequencing things. And the anterior frontal cingulate cortex is an area of the brain which harmonizes our activity and can be considered sort of like part of the executive guidance, which is letting you know what's too much, what's not enough. And you need blood flow to these regions, Lukey. But the various areas of our brain, we have, for instance, an area of our brain which is very fibrous, and the corpus that we have a bundle of connective fibers between both our hemispheres, and there's a little fornix which the front part of the brain can be sloshed against, and if it does, it can cause a damage, and any concussion to the brain at all can create all sorts of behavioural challenges, including transient states of amnesia and this sort of thing. But then certainly transient states of amnesia can be caused because of the added reactions that people have, that they do 10,000 times themselves, because I am is, or I awareness really doesn't exist. But as I awareness does exist in your health and wellness, without me telling you anything, you are applying principles and syntax of behavior, what we're talking about. But the amygdala and the tegmentum are areas of the brain which is involved in aversion and repugnance and avoidance and a dissociation and sort of like moving away from things and looking at the outside more and away and directions like that, versus being more going toward things, having been and moving toward things, moving along and having things within us. But then if we were directed ever more, other than in this integrated self as we're talking, but that we could have been focused on that over there, the central nervous system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis really is changed as a result of either your feeling states of pleasure, which creates whole brain patterning, or aversion, which creates inhibited and limited mind function and limited brain function, and only allows a behavior to be that rote, learnt, short, sequenced, like Tourette syndrome even is an example of this. But the frontal cortex is somebody really remain more in their interest and pleasure and their caringness, you can become aware more that new information is coming in and being given to you that you can be applying. And this is really your executive guidance existing, and this is becoming active in ever your awareness more about this beautiful voice you have, which is your familiar voice. And out of the 10,000 tonal ranges that's possible that you can hear, there's one tonal range, and you're really paying attention to this voice, right? It's making sense. And this is the voice of the face of ease, Lukey. But anterior frontal cortex, cingulate sort of area, and the cortex harmonizes our activity, and the insular area of our brain is another area anatomically in the brain which senses internal states and things. And whole brain patterning is more a polar completeness. But if you've really got people, of course, a lot of these people who are in charge of the media, which is a monopoly, like the top patsy, Ted Turner, or Murdoch, for instance, they take really orders more given and connected to the hand above the government. Of course, the news really about soldiers' suicide really are more than killed in action is really, of course, a great a tragedy, and I feel such a deep shame of society, but that people need to be aware that a phantom could have been in charge, and that you and I really need to be ever more aware that we really only can have proper leadership as we have the government working as a people, and the people really need to own the growth of the money supply. But otherwise, all the news sort of just a reeling against not recognizing what insanity is existing in allowing a private person to own the growth of the money supply and then control people around. It's so amazing that when I do this show, the people around me all of a sudden just disappear and they start doing other things other than paying attention. It's so unbelievable, you know. But then lots of noises happen. I wonder if everybody heard my door slam. That's just the noise of the wind. But, you know, you really, 1 billion being given to the UN by that top patsy of the hand above government, Ted Turner, just like Murdoch, really. I don't know necessarily that it's a people person, but maybe Ted's a bit more of a people person than Murdoch, who Murdoch really is sort of an owned person and doesn't own anything, and is just a phantom, really, and is not a person at all, not at all, you know, because of what the tribe is that he just is allowed to have his name put to. But 1 billion given to the UN it really is a message coming from Ted that apparently we are more evolved in ourselves not to be fighting. I think that's a very good, a beautiful beingness, but of course it's not really dealing with the situation, you know, not at all, and it's sort of like an ostrich with his head in the bloody sand. And what a bloody idiot! I'm sorry, but people in America here need to own the growth of the money supply themselves. Thank you very much, Ted. You know what I mean? And Rupert, you know, if you're listening, you know, America need to own the growth of the money supply themselves. All right. And soldier suicide is just put an instrument of unhappiness in his hands, and to be fatherless, and fathers not to be with their sons not to be with their fathers. And that's going on to my son, just exactly what it is. And I think the message is for males who commit suicide the world over, that it's a message of a loss of love, mate. That's what that is a message of. It's a message of a loss of love, all right? But look, I think it's really stupid, Ted, if you're listening, you know what I mean, and Rupert,
and then everybody who's in the club there. It's really ridiculous. You know what you're doing. I know what you've got to do. You've got to clear those landmines away, definitely. You know what I mean? But stop planting more, you know what I mean? And it's more than just that, isn't it? But if you're only putting money into ambulances, you know, which that's nice, isn't it? And hospitals sort of thing, that's very nice, isn't it? Lovely. But are you really doing what you can to stop what's going on and having a more innovation and taking hold of today's innovation here right now, which is new, and get rid of yesterday's solution, which is part of the problem. But if you're just a part of putting problems and building problems and then putting a little solution forward that runs money and things, which is just, thank you very much. What a little amount of money to be nothing. We need to be creating of the money ourselves, thank you very much, and putting forward what's necessary. That's a bit more like a fence, mate, you know what I mean? Why would you bother, mate, honesty, to just go past the point of deciding that you would put all your money and your effort into ambulances to take people away that fell at the bottom of the cliff, when you really wouldn't be giving a crap much about putting a fence and a sign up, you know what I mean? Do you think that might just sort of save a bit of money, you know what I mean? And then money wouldn't be spent, you know what I mean? You wouldn't be spending it on that, would you? And so it's really like a ostrich with its head in the sand, you know? Anyone who really is talking right now and giving money to the United Nations, but not really saying, look, people need to own the growth of the money supply. Thank you very much, Ted and Rupert. You know what I mean? And lots and lots of people are saying that. You know, but would you come out and say that's not so? You know what I mean? I don't think so. You've really got got to take hold of today's innovation, or just be stuck and remain with yesterday's solution, all right? But why don't you just, before you sit down, feel excited a little bit, like you can get something done, you know what I mean? Take hold, really, of what we're talking about here, of today's innovation, all right? If you cannot better it, then the words should be behind, I'm sorry. But that's just would have been a stuckness in yesterday's solution, all right? But why don't you start taking action a little bit more in yourself, because, it's not good enough just for you to really be all lovey-dovey in your spiritual being, but you really don't have any idea of the law. The law could be deadly, and then you have no idea about nutrition, that could be deadly, just as we've been talking about all of this insulin growth factor and stuff like that, But if brain scans of kids that are 3 years old could be applied, why not a behavioural index, which actually really is what creates wellness? I mean, if you can pick out a brain scan to find a future criminal, I mean, is that really sort of not what you're really doing? Is it not what you're doing is to find what is necessary to be healed and assisted to be changed to be whole? But if you're just got a news item like you're picking scans out, of kids that are 3 years old, and you're part of the American Association of Advanced Science, and that's being funded by Rockefeller, I wonder whether he would even care that you frame things so damn negatively for him. I don't feel that he would care for that. I personally feel that if brain scans can be done, they could be done just as everything else to assist a person to become more whole. But if you've just created a goat jumping on top of another goat, how do you stop people just not wanting to save $5 because you could really have a better light bulb, which really is biologically friendly and not got lead in it or something, But if you reckon that small areas of the brain, like the amygdala, which could have atrophied because of excitotoxic compounds, which is in food, like baby food, and is fed enormously to institutionalized children, but not children who have mother and father. Isn't that interesting? Institutionalized children are drugged, are pin-cushioned, just like our soldiers, which I really weep about. I'm personally disgusted. And listen, if people just like Ted and these others and David and all other these people are not having someone there framing things more positively, and you're unaware of your createdness of the mess, there's a part which really is about loving, and you really need to be finding alternative ways of loving. Puppy dogs, and really plants. You start looking after plants. You start getting. Have you watered a plant lately? Are you listening? No, I'm asking you. Have you watered a plant? What are you doing? Are you caring for something? If you're not caring for something and you're listening right now, stop what you've been doing and start doing something new. All right? Because the part of you which is really your lovingness, this needs to be more, integrated. And the part of the terror, let's forgive that. You know what I mean? Let's forgive it. Because that is very, very important. You have to have a candidate for conciliation. And then why not have candidates for conciliation? But only conciliation could be because candidates exist. And conciliation as a process really is because, first, you need to be forgiven, but you're my son and you're my daughter and you're my baby, and I'm really caring very much about you, and I don't want anybody necessarily to say anything that causes you other than to wake up and just simply live life and be happy in your happiness. And that's something that you can be and have within yourself, but certainly you've got this which you should care for, which is also the civic function in your being. You know what I mean? And I think personally much, much, much more needs to be given to the soldiers and all of that have been involved in that, which is not a way to settle things. It's a groveling, all right? It's an absolute groveledness, and it means that you really haven't thought that you've read the Sailor's Bible, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Why not read that? And why not apply these technical teachings which we're giving you right now? You just roam around like a bloody moonstruck cow. If you've got an instrument in front of you, you are perpetual, just like, God help us, obsessive compulsive. Stop. Take a breath. Relax. Don't be so grasshopperish. Jumping from here, jumping from there, jumping all over the place, God help us. This is not I-aware, all right? You could pursue crime, certainly, at a level in the home, because the first forms of crime that occur to children really is not talking to them and people not talking to each other and being aloof. That is violence. That's the major form of violence that's happening in America. The second major form of violence that's happening in America is people are being distracted and using distraction. They surf stupid things. They remain with stupid stuff. They don't get anything done. They try to reduce, they reduce things so that what's essential is gone, so nothing gets done at all. And absolutely time pass, you can see this going on. Look, take hold of today's innovation right now. I know that you think I'm not talking to you, but I am. I'm letting you really know this, all right? The suicide of the BBC reporter in the news, of course, his claim really of sexual harassment being ignored. I mean,